The world held its breath. Across Earth's continents, every screen flickered with the same countdown clock, 12 minutes. 12 minutes until the announcement that could change everything. Cities were silent in the way that cities are when people pause to wonder if history is unfolding around them. In Shanghai, neon advertisements dimmed, the hum of hover cars softened as citizens stopped mid-step to glance at their wrist displays. In New York, the city lights reflected off the Hudson as if the river itself waited for a revelation. On Mars, the first colony, still fragile, still new, watched from pressurized domes, red dust drifting outside as scientists, engineers, and settlers alike pressed their faces to monitors and viewport glass. Hoping for the spark that would illuminate the meaning of human ambition, inside the glass towers of a rebuilt SpaceX headquarters orbiting Earth, Elon, or someone who looked, sounded, and carried the weight of Elon, paced. The hum of computers, the low whir of cooling systems, the occasional ping of incoming satellite feeds formed a rhythm that matched the tightening pulse in his chest. He paused at a bank of monitors showing live feeds from Mars, domes glowing in the dark, robotic rovers shifting, and colonists moving like ants across the alien plains. The name, the chosen name, had been locked away for decades in encrypted vaults, whispered in private memos, buried in layers of code. And now, in 12 minutes, it would be broadcast that he stared at the countdown. 11 minutes, 59 seconds. Each tick was measured and merciless. Somewhere, a technician muttered something about signal calibration, but Elon barely heard it. His mind was elsewhere, replaying the first images of Mars, the barren horizon that had once seemed hostile, now becoming home. He thought about the generations who would look to the sky and wonder, not just what they could reach, but why. This was the moment when a name could crystallize purpose, could become a symbol, could turn the fragile experiment of human survival into a narrative worth believing. Across the globe, television stations had gone dark in the corners of the world not served by the main feed. On Mars, the colony's central communications hub hummed with tension. Commander Rhea Thorne stood among her team, eyes fixed on the central monitor. Her hands, gloved and trembling slightly, gripped the console as she imagined the moment the name flashed across every screen, every viewport, every interface humans had ever trusted to connect them. Some would scoff, some would cheer, some would be paralyzed by the sudden weight of what the name implied. 10 minutes left. A voice echoed in Elon's earpiece, signal stable. Broadcast ready. His lips moved, silent to anyone nearby. He remembered the first time he saw the code in the data vault, a cryptic sequence that had been debated again. And then deemed too dangerous, too bold, too necessary. It was a name that could unify, divide, inspire, terrify. It was a name that could alter the trajectory of civilization. News anchors across Earth leaned into their cameras, hands clasped, scripts abandoned, because they knew that nothing could be scripted for this. On Mars, the red dust storm outside made the dome shudder slightly, a reminder that the colony, though proud, was fragile, and that the human spirit was often more fragile still. Across both planets, people whispered into devices, shared private messages, and held hands with strangers, as though their collective pulse could be synchronized to the countdown clock. 9 minutes remaining. Elon stepped onto the platform. The studio lights glared, but they were pale compared to the sun's reflection off the Martian plains visible on the monitors behind him. The live feeds were ready, the encryption keys had been engaged, the name locked, and now only he could release it. He inhaled, feeling the weight of expectation pressing from Earth, from Mars, from every human who had dared to dream beyond the cradle of their home planet. The silence in the room was suffocating, broken only by the digital heartbeat of the countdown, 9 minutes, 8 minutes, 7. In the shadows behind him, aides and engineers moved like ghosts, making last-second adjustments. Elon closed his eyes briefly and remembered why this mattered. Not for fame, not for money, not for power, but because the human story needed direction. The chosen name was more than a label. It was a beacon, a challenge, an invitation to step into the unknown with courage. 6 minutes remaining. On the streets of Earth, on the domes of Mars, on every interface that could display it, people felt it, the gravity of a moment suspended between history and myth. Elon's hand hovered over the launch button for the reveal. His heartbeat echoed in his ears. The world had no idea what was coming. 5 minutes. The feed synchronized perfectly. Engineers nodded, technicians held their breaths. Somewhere, a child on Mars tugged at a parent's sleeve, asking what would happen when the name appeared. The parent didn't answer. No one did. It was not a question that could be answered, only experienced. 4 minutes. Elon's finger trembled slightly. In those brief moments, his mind raced through centuries of explorers, inventors, dreamers who had stood where humanity once stood, on the edge of nothing, staring at the infinite, daring to hope. He thought of the first settlers of Mars, whose lives had been exchanged for a fragile foothold in a hostile world. Their struggle, their courage, their lives, would converge in a single point of revelation. 3 minutes. The camera lights flared. Every eye watching would see him, hear him, feel the weight of his presence. Elon breathed in, holding the collective anticipation like a physical thing pressing against his chest. He wondered if the name would comfort them, terrify them, or ignite something entirely unexpected. 2 minutes. On Earth, a hush fell over city squares, offices, homes. Screens flickered with the same image, Elon Musk, or his visionary counterpart, poised, calm, and impossibly human under the weight of the cosmos. On Mars, Commander Thorne's eyes glinted with a mixture of fear and awe. Every settler knew that in minutes, they would witness the unfolding of history, a name that could redefine humanity's place among the stars. 60 seconds. The countdown slowed, became a heartbeat, a drum in the chest of the universe. Elon's finger rested above the button. He remembered the vault, the code, the sleepless nights, the arguments, the dreams. And then, as if time itself hesitated, the world waited. 0. The button pressed, every screen blinked. Every monitor, every dome display, every personal device simultaneously displayed the chosen name. A name that shimmered with unspoken meaning, a name that carried the weight of destiny, a name that would echo through the corridors of history, and in that instant, across Earth and Mars, the human heart collectively skipped a beat, teetering on the edge of revelation, fear, and wonder, knowing that the future had just been named, and nothing would ever be the same again. The chosen name burned across every screen, a symbol now seared into collective memory. On Earth, in Times Square, thousands of people stared at the massive billboards, their faces pale, lips parted. Some gasped, some laughed nervously, some wept. The name was elegant and alien, composed of letters that seemed familiar yet impossible in their arrangement, like a language half remembered from dreams humanity hadn't yet had. On Mars, the settlers pressed closer to their monitors, their helmets off, faces flushed, eyes wide. Commander Rhea Thorne's jaw tightened as she whispered the name aloud, tasting its syllables as if they were molten metal. The initial wave of broadcast chatter was chaotic. News anchors stumbled over themselves, trying to fill the silence with words, but no words could encapsulate what humanity had just witnessed. Social media erupted in milliseconds, a tidal wave of speculation, awe, disbelief, and panic. Linguists argued over pronunciation. Historians hunted for precedent. Theologians debated whether it was prophecy. Hackers on Earth and Mars attempted to decrypt it, to find hidden patterns, codes embedded within, but the sequence resisted analysis, evading every algorithm. Within hours, the chosen name became more than a word, it became a pulse running through the nervous system of civilization. Theories circulated. Some claimed it was an ancient Martian word uncovered in long-forgotten satellite scans. Others insisted it was a quantum key, a sequence capable of unlocking advanced technology. A few whispered that it was a warning, a summons, a call to something beyond human comprehension. And through it all, Elon, calm, measured, unflinching, watched the ripples of his revelation spread across two worlds. In orbit, aboard the massive transport station linking Earth and Mars, engineers and scientists monitored communications. Data streams flickered like the nervous firing of a synapse. One anomaly, in particular, drew Rhea Thorne's attention. The name seemed to generate faint pulses, not just on screens, but in the very electronics of the colony. Sensors on Mars' surface registered electromagnetic fluctuations coinciding precisely with the moment of broadcast. Every instrument recorded it, Every log time-stamped it, and yet no one could explain it. The colony's atmosphere, already tense from isolation and harsh living conditions, grew heavier. The settlers whispered in hushed tones. Some said the name made their dreams sharper, more vivid, filled with visions of alien landscapes beyond Mars. Others felt unease, a cold ripple of apprehension that traced along the spine. Rhea kept her voice low during the briefing. "We don't understand it yet," she said, "but we can't ignore it. Treat it as a signal." Back on Earth, governments convened emergency sessions. Military strategists worried over the possible implications. Was the name a key, a password, or a warning? Some saw opportunity, others, threat. Analysts debated the morality of its revelation. Philosophers held panels on primetime networks, discussing destiny, free will, and the ethical responsibilities of unveiling such a symbol. In homes and offices, ordinary people felt the weight of being participants in history, their lives subtly tilted by the unfolding event. Elon retreated briefly into a private observation chamber, overlooking a panorama of the colony's progress on Mars. The screens displayed domes, rovers, and scattered human figures navigating red plains, their every movement underlaid with a new resonance now tied to the chosen name. He touched the glass, as though willing the pulse to reveal its secrets. For years, he had predicted technological revolutions, colonization milestones, breakthroughs, but this name, was something beyond metrics, beyond projections. It was a living idea, a catalyst, an entity that could not be fully controlled. The first reports of physical phenomena followed within 48 hours. On Earth, sensitive satellites detected inexplicable shifts in the magnetosphere, minor, localized, but undeniable. On Mars, several rovers reported interference with navigation systems, inexplicable glitches where maps warped, compasses spun. Some settlers claimed auditory hallucinations, whispers in empty domes, voices that spoke in the cadence of the chosen name. Rhea ordered the data to be recorded, but even she could not deny the subtle tension that had crept into every corridor, every workstation. Then came the dreams. Across Earth and Mars, people began reporting a shared experience. They dreamed of vast corridors of light stretching into the unknown, of voices and faces they did not recognize yet somehow remembered. In the dreams, the name echoed, repeated, shaping visions that felt like warnings, invitations, prophecies. Psychologists argued over mass hysteria. Neuroscientists scrambled to quantify the phenomenon. But the effect was undeniable. The name had entered the collective subconscious, linking minds across planets. In Elon's private chamber. He watched the first dream reports arrive in real time, transmitted through neural monitoring experiments. His expression remained stoic, but beneath it was a gnawing anxiety. The name had been meant to inspire, to guide, not to terrify. Yet the magnitude of its influence was far beyond what he had predicted. Somehow, the name was alive in ways he could not yet measure. Rhea convened a council among Mars' senior staff. "We need to understand the source," she said. "Is it a message from us, a message from someone, or something else?" Her words hung in the sterile air, unanswered. The colonists exchanged uneasy glances, realizing that whatever had been unleashed was not bound by technology, physics, or even their understanding of human cognition. It was something new, something alien in its simplicity and complexity at once. Across Earth, debates raged. Philosophers pondered existential implications. Corporations sought to monetize understanding. Religious institutions scrambled to interpret, claim, or contain it. Entire news cycles vanished under the gravity of this one revelation. And all the while, Elon prepared for the next step, a transmission not merely to Mars or Earth, but beyond, to the outer colonies, to satellites, to the void. The chosen name had been revealed, but its journey had just begun. As the first week passed, subtle patterns emerged. Satellites orbiting distant moons registered faint signals in synchrony with the chosen name. Mathematical models began to suggest that the name was not arbitrary, it was a sequence, a fractal perhaps, woven into the structure of spacetime itself. The colonists on Mars noticed that plants in hydroponic bays grew faster when exposed to monitors displaying the name, while others reported feelings of inexplicable clarity, as if the name had awakened latent cognitive pathways. Elon watched all this unfold with a mixture of triumph and unease. The revelation had been perfect, exactly as intended, yet it had exceeded every boundary of prediction. The name was more than a word, it was a force, a vector pointing to an unknown, waiting to be deciphered. And somewhere, deep in the Martian plains, where sensors failed to penetrate and communication lagged, a presence, perhaps conscious, perhaps not, seemed to respond. The pulse of the name extended, touching something ancient, something patient, something that had waited for humanity to reach this moment. Rhea felt it first. Standing alone in one of the outer domes, she traced her fingers along the viewport. The Martian wind rattled the structure, red dust swarming outside, yet inside she felt a vibration, faint but undeniable, coursing through the floor, through her, through everything. She whispered the name aloud, and for a fleeting second, the dome seemed to hum back, as if acknowledging, as if listening. The implications were staggering. Humanity had not merely been given a name, it had been given a key, a resonance, a bridge. But to what? To knowledge. To power. To danger. Elon, watching from orbit, understood that history would judge this moment not by the unveiling, but by the consequences that would ripple through decades, centuries, millennia. And in that silence, across Earth and Mars, across the void between planets, the first whisper of something greater stirred, faint, almost imperceptible, yet undeniably present. The chosen name was not the end. It was only the beginning.